Breaking news for college football fans and SEC football fans today. The SEC office has released their 2025 opponents for each of their SEC members. We are going to offer our thoughts and reactions to that reveal in breaking news today. All that's coming up right now. War Eagle, everyone, especially to our Auburn family, but even more special welcome. Thank you to our E2C Network family for tuning in. Whether you are watching live, whether you are catching this on the replay, we appreciate you being here and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. As I expect, there will be a lot of different perspectives and fan bases tuning in, either live or on the replay, to this type of content. It is something that affects many of us, not just the Auburn faithful, but of course, this will be an Auburn slant. On what is the topic? The topic is the 2025 SEC opponent. I won't call it a schedule, but I will call it at least you know what your opponents are. From the SEC office is now out for official. Auburn has released theirs as well, but you can find the full graphic available for the SEC schedules. I hate calling it schedules across the board. For the not next season, because next season is 2024 at this point, but the season after that, 2025, we wanted to hop on real quick, talk about it, offer some thoughts, reactions, opinions. Would love to know some of y'all's as well. So don't be shy if you're watching live. You can also offer opinions on the replay too if you'd like to do that. But especially if you're watching live, we'd love to hear some of your reactions to what you're seeing on the board. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring it up on the board for you all so you can take a look at it. This image comes courtesy of the SEC office. You can find it on their website, sec.com or Southeastern Conference. I don't know which one it is. So there you go. Your 2025 conference opponents, not a schedule, but your 2025 opponents for every single team. If you want to take a long look at that, don't worry, I'll bring it back up, but I'm not going to have y'all stare at that the entire time. All of the schools represented here, all 16 schools that we want to talk about, react to, offer some opinions about. But most importantly, if you'll look there in the, at least on my screen, it is the center left, the Auburn schedule. You'll see that the home teams for each opponent, or the home portion of your opponents, are in white, and I guess that is black or a darker something. The away portion is highlighted in that. For Auburn in 2025, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri, and then away at Arkansas, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, at Vanderbilt. Very, very interesting implications that we want to talk about here, that we want to dive into. I think this definitely changes the narrative and the dynamic of what we were all anticipating for the upcoming, well, not the upcoming season, it's 2024, but for the 2025 year. A lot of people were thinking, and it was pretty much blatantly said, that we would get a new format to go with these conference realignment discussions that are happening, expansions, and the schedule would be completely different, or at least how it was managed in 2025. Doesn't necessarily seem to be the case there, but there you have a first look at it. We'll bring it back up on the screen for you guys. Don't worry if you want to get another look at it right there. So I'm a little bit intrigued for a few reasons here, because, as I said, it was proposed, suggested, the thought process was that the SEC schedules in 2025 would be drastically different. I think this suggests that there is some more land shaking, earth shaking, news, moves, decisions on the way. And maybe not even that, but just the unstable nature that is the college football landscape, with conference realignment, expansion, with governance, expressions of unhappiness with the NCAA, people wanting more of a say, the playoff expanding. I'm wondering if what we're seeing here, not just for Auburn, but for the rest of the SEC, is a decision to keep the status quo as much as you can when it's already changing, this coming year. Not for 2025. It'll be the second year with Oklahoma and Texas, but for 2024. To me, it seems like we're trying to keep the status quo for now. Oh, it's different. Our home games this year are away next year. It's completely flip-flopped. What do you think about that? I mean, are you happy about that? In some ways, it's kind of nice. One of our biggest complaints as Auburn fans, but also just college football fans or SEC fans in general, was the fact that the way it was set up before the conference expansion with Oklahoma and Texas is that it would take 6 years for us to see an opponent on the other side of the division, another 12 years for us to see them at their place or them to come to you, whichever didn't happen the first time. But now in this setup, you're seeing the opponent 1 year and then doing the exact opposite with them the next year. That's a little bit foreign. That's a little bit different. We're not used to that unless you're talking about divisional play, which is no longer existent at this point. So those are some just first off top of my mind things, not even truly Auburn related. We want to dive into the Auburn portion of the schedule here in just a little bit more detail. But just thinking off the top here, it's the exact same. It seems like I may have a few details missed here. This is just an initial reaction, but flip-flopped. What does that mean for what's coming? I've got a lot of thoughts going through my head right now. Again, if you go type in just 2025 SEC schedules, it'll take you pretty much to that article that they've released with this image that we've been sharing a lot for you. And in fact, I'll bring it up on screen for you all while I read you some details from the release. Take another gander at that as I give you some details from it. I won't read this verbatim, but I think some of these things are important for you all to know. This was announced today, this Wednesday, just before March Madness. So smart move by them to get, I won't call it earth-shattering news. Maybe that was a little bit hyperbole, but very important news just before March Madness kicks off here. Similar to the 2024 SEC football schedule, during 2025, season teams will play 8 conference games plus 1 required opponent from either the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, or a major independent. I guess that would be UConn, Notre Dame, and I think BYU wouldn't be an independent anymore, but maybe it's just at this point Notre Dame. I'm not sure who else that would be. Schools will play the same opponents in 2025. And this is verbatim from the SEC release that they scheduled in 2024 with sites changed for equal home and away competition over the course of 2 years. The 2024 season is the first in which Oklahoma and Texas will compete. This is from Sankey, Commissioner Greg Sankey. We continue to monitor changes across college sports as they related to future scheduling, continuing with our current format for the 2025 season provides additional time to understand the impact of the changes happening around us as we determine the appropriate long-term plan for SEC football scheduling. The full scheduling dates will be released at a later time. And this was approved by the SEC presidents, the chancellors, all the people that this needs to go through will definitely have approved of this thing. So, obviously, I think the first thought, let's dive into the Auburn stuff because I know that's where most of our audience is. We'll get to some bigger, broader stuff here in just a second again. But if you look at the Auburn portion of the schedule, you will see home, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, and Missouri. Again, this is the flip-flop of last year, but just making sure we have that stated. 2 very difficult games, or what would be perceived as difficult games based on what we know now about those programs, and what in a normal year would be 2 easier ones, Kentucky and Missouri. Missouri is on the rise, though, so that could be even more difficult if they continue their rise and bring that to Jordan here in 2025, which if they are that good still in 2025, that'll be nice to have those 3 difficult opponents at home. Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt basically traveling out west. We got all the West, well, not all, a bunch of the West teams to come in this way. Now they're coming back to us. And Vanderbilt again. Was this 3 years now with Vanderbilt? It's just going to build the narrative up that Auburn has an easy schedule. And I think people are going to let us have it for that, to be honest with you. And I'm not the least bit shocked about that, but it is a little bit um, interesting to see that we lucked out to get Vanderbilt 3 years in a row. If I've got my math right on there, that's quite interesting to see that the fact that we're going to be having them around for a little bit. And then, of course, having Arkansas and Texas A&M is something we're used to. Oklahoma, getting them 2 years in a row. So you'll have to wait 2 years, 3 years, technically, Auburn fans, to see Texas outside of you both making it to the SEC championship game at the same time. Or I don't know. I guess they won't play each other in a bowl game anymore. That's another thing to consider. So if you're itching for that Texas matchup, well, it ain't going to happen this year, and it ain't going to happen in 2025. At least that's how things stand right now. Like I said, it's important that Auburn will get Alabama and Georgia at home. Kentucky, if they keep Mark Stoops, will probably be still somewhat formidable. So I think even though you look at Alabama and Georgia as the home schedule, and you're like, yes, thank goodness after 2024, don't slouch on either Kentucky or Missouri. Going to Vanderbilt back there, maybe they'll have their scoreboard up by that time. Arkansas, if they continue the trend that's going with them and Petrino experiment doesn't work out again for them on as an OC, maybe they'll be in a downward spiral, which will help us. Going to Oklahoma is going to be challenging. And I know a lot of Auburn fans will be super excited about trying to make that trip out to Norman for the first time. Maybe. Yeah, I think it's the first time ever. And then we're used to going to Kyle Field at this point. And typically in that series, at least it used to be, the history the visitor would have the most success. So that bodes well for Auburn's favor. Not knowing anything about the teams, obviously, because it's over almost 2 years in the future. I like the way this schedule sets up for Auburn, even with going on the road to Oklahoma, to Texas A&M. Depends on what you think about for the upcoming SEC, the non-conference schedules. The big opponent for Auburn this year, we're welcoming Cal back. That year would be our first year going out to UCLA if everything holds the way it's supposed to. So a Big Ten opponent at that point. So right now we know it would be at UCLA, at Arkansas, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M. That's not an easy away schedule. So very favorable that we got Alabama and Georgia and Missouri, at least what we know right now, at home to start off the year. I am just what's the term? I'm intrigued by what I'm seeing from the decision to make this continue into 2025, keeping the same schedule. As I kind of hinted at it and basically said, what this alludes me to is the thought that there are more changes coming for the SEC and college football. Obviously, with the Big Ten snagging up a share of the Western Coast, what I wonder is if you're not going to go ahead after that first year, because that when they released the 2024 schedule, what they said was, what they told us all was that this was going to be a placeholder. In 2025, we were going to start moving in the direction of getting a more solidified regular schedule going forward. If you're going to hold, that tells me more is coming and will be very, very interesting to follow in the coming weeks, months, and year. And now this makes me even more excited for the 2026 schedule, because what does that mean? Is there more expansion coming? Is there more changes that are going to drastically alter this in a way? I think this decision for the 2024 schedule is a direct response to what we don't know yet. And I don't know if there's another way to chalk it up or not chalk it up in any regard. So if you guys have any thoughts on it, let me know. I'm going to bring it back up on the screen again for you all to look at. Maybe here on the back end of the show, we can talk more about Auburn, but obviously want to look at some of the other schedules to maybe round out the show to talk about what they might have to face in store. One other quick note, again, Auburn knew it wasn't going to see old rival LSU again next year. 2 years in a row, no LSU. How does that make you feel, Auburn fans? I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's there. And you can definitely make peace with that or not. Looking at this schedule just briefly. So Alabama, this is obviously an important factor for us. LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee at home, at Auburn, at Georgia, and then at Missouri would be, in theory, challenging as well. So a pretty even keeled away schedule for them. I would say Auburn's is pretty even keeled too. So both of those schedules seem somewhat fair. They get their most challenging opponent. Well, some of their most challenging opponents: LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, at home. They get Vanderbilt at home. Of course, we have Vanderbilt too, so we can't be really saying much. Let's look at Georgia. They have Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Texas at home. They have Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, and Tennessee on the road. So pretty even keeled there too. Maybe another reason why they kept it this way is they liked it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying they should, but it definitely seems like they liked it, at least a little bit. That was Alabama and Georgia. Let's look at Oklahoma and Texas again, just as a reminder. They will have their neutral site game together, which is considered part, I guess, either one would be home, one would be away. Oklahoma, Auburn, LSU, and Missouri at home. Alabama, Tennessee, and a neutral site game with Texas. That's pretty challenging. Texas, they will get Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M at home. That's a pretty easy home schedule for the most part outside of Oklahoma, and that's a neutral site game. At Florida, at Georgia, Kentucky could be dangerous. That might be quite challenging of a away schedule there. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Man, this is really interesting here. The real stuntman says, I actually think that FSU in the Clemson situation has put a hold on moving past the future schedules. And that's what I was getting at, right? That's what I was kind of getting at. And I don't think it's just those two, but those are two major players in what's happening. We saw the college football landscape get rocked by the Big Ten going out and grabbing those teams out in the West Coast. Everything else kind of split it up after that. When the Pac-12 started to implode, you're seeing the ACC start to implode. So what happens with Florida State, with Clemson? Typically, if you're the SEC, you want to expand places you're not. This is a hot take. I've said this before. I acknowledge that. But I think the SEC missed an opportunity in trying. They should have gone and snagged Arizona and Arizona State. Not that those bring humongous upside in terms of competition to the table, but what it does is it gets you out to the West Coast or the West Coast market. I think that would have been super smart on their part, but they missed out on that opportunity. Obviously, things can change. But what that means is maybe Clemson, Florida State, some of these people, these teams that SEC fans have clamored about rivalries and stuff, maybe bring it into the fold. Thus, why there's a hold on this. Seems like you agree. Brian says, I miss playing Florida. Well, you're going to miss them for yet another year. It just feels like the Auburn-Florida rivalry is destined to never be a thing, at least on a frequency level, ever again. It's so great when we get together. I have memories of going to Florida games. I'm not that old, but it was a long time ago at this point. Obviously been down to the Swamp one time. I do hate that we're still delayed on seeing if we'll ever get to see them again. LSU is a classic, though. I'm going to miss it. Tigers versus Tigers, 2 years in a row. No LSU fans. Now, here's maybe move our discussion in this direction, our conversation about this. What becomes of the next season's schedule if the changes start happening, but maybe the changes aren't complete yet? Do you flip the script and do everybody else that you haven't played? So there's 16 teams, 8 conference opponents. That would only leave 7 to flip over here, which would mean you would get a repeat. likely who would fill that spot for you? For like an Auburn, you played Vanderbilt 3 years in a row now. Definitely not. Well, I think it's 3 years in a row. At that point, it would be. You probably wouldn't get them on your cycle again. Maybe that's how this goes down. Maybe that's how this decision is made. I don't know, but it's got my head spinning right now on what to think about. David says flip every 2 years. I mean, how about this? Let's ask this question. Are you guys okay with if this is the schedule going forward? Again, if you flip every 2 years, you're going to have one less, as things stand right now, SEC team. If they add teams, you're likely not going to add just one. That fixes that problem. But then you're going to have an odd number of teams. But I guess in division, if there's no divisions, it doesn't really matter. But maybe it opens the door just to add one team and not do the standard 2-team addition in an expansion situation. I don't know. I mean, this is why we do reaction streams, because I'm trying to process all this myself, and talking to myself, to you all, helps me try to reconcile with all of that. If there's one team that comes into the league, I mean, maybe it's your Florida State. That would probably make the most sense. I still think the SEC would behoove themselves to go steal someone that gets them into a different market. A Miami, I know that's already Florida, but that's a market unto itself. A West Virginia, stealing them from the Big 12. Gosh, I mean, there's so many different ways this thing can go. I don't know if flipping every 2 years necessarily fix everything. Gracie is convinced that she's heard that the SEC doesn't want Clemson. I could see a scenario where it's not advantageous for them to bring Clemson in, but I think we're all getting the sense that Clemson and Florida State are somewhat of a package deal. Virginia makes the most sense. Virginia Tech, Auburn should add Oklahoma State or Baylor. I don't know that we're going to see another Texas team. Of course, everything's just kind of going up in the air at this point. I don't know that we're going to see another Texas team. You might see another Oklahoma team. Maybe, maybe not. I would say something in the vein of what you don't have: a North Carolina team, Virginia team. I think West Virginia would bring a lot because it gets you closer up into that northeastern arm. So does Virginia. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. I know it's kind of sparked from this discussion. We're focusing on the schedules, but yeah, man, lot to process from this news. Let me bring it up again. We'll start kind of rounding out our show here. So if you've got final thoughts and questions and comments that you'd like to make about this 2025 announcement, let me know. Auburn has Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri at home. Away at Arkansas, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, at Vanderbilt. Going to Nashville, Auburn North as it's become, and then going out west is what this is. The complete opposite of 2024. Whether or not you like it, it doesn't matter. That's what's happening. And this feels like this is in response to coming changes for the SEC and for college football, with so much there's a very volatile time right now. All right. I'll take some final questions, comments, topics about this major topic, the 2025 schedule for Auburn, but also the SEC. Let us remind you real quick of what we got going on. To keep in mind, this is more time-sensitive stuff. So if you're watching this in the distant past or future, this is not as relevant. But starting tomorrow, it's March Madness. We have our March Madness bracket contest. Please join up. You can find the links on social media and sign up that way through the ESPN app. You could also just search us for groups in there on the ESPN Tournament Challenge app, E2C Network 2024. Barnes Supply is supplying that $50, essentially an e-gift card value coupon code for you all to shop with them, but they are a sponsor for this year. Don't miss tonight, the Auburn Family live stream. This will be discussed. I thought all we would be talking about was March Madness. Yes, we will, but this will be discussed as well. And of course, we'll have a post-game stream after Yale. If there are more games after that, we will be talking about that. So that's what's coming up for you right now. The question is, if things change, you might get one set rivalry game every single year. So something we didn't even discuss. So it's a great point to bring up. A lot of complaints about already who some teams may or may not have lost. Um, LSU was lost for Auburn. Some other people lost some rivalries that maybe they wanted. The question becomes, as things expand further, does Auburn lose the Georgia game? And I think we're now this kind of begins to bury that possibility a little bit. I think the Georgia annual matchup may be in jeopardy based on this. So my advice to you, you have 2 years of back-to-back Georgia games that are confirmed. Enjoy them while you got them. I keep saying it, but there's a lot of implications from this. Here, I'll bring it back up on the screen. Some of you are saying you didn't see some things. There's your schedule right there for 2025. The what we will be playing that year. Daniel says Auburn got lucky not playing LSU and Ole Miss. Maybe so. Maybe so. Ole Miss obviously appears to be in a good place and trending in the right direction. LSU, you just never know. They kind of go up, they kind of go down. They're always competitive. But I would say that is nice to not have them on the schedule anymore. I won't deny that anyway. But we get to have Oklahoma, which is great. So, man, folks, I'm excited now. I did not expect to get that news today. Smart of the SEC to drop it. In summary, schedule for 2025, exactly the opposite, at least the SEC opponents, exactly the opposites. We don't know the dates. We don't know times. Obviously, that will be announced at a later date, but a lot of questions, a lot of implications come out of the decision to keep it the same, unlike what they suggested would happen, a change in 2025. More changes are coming in the near future. So saddle up, boys and girls. I want to thank you guys for tuning in for our impromptu live stream here and joining us in this conversation. Always great to meet with you guys and talk about these things when the stories break. So if you have any other additional thoughts, comments, obviously drop them in the comments section and we'll talk about them after the fact, after the show is over. Hope to see you guys on some of our upcoming content. And I appreciate you hanging out with us today. Until we talk to you later and we see you again, War Eagle.